Hello, and welcome to the third part of the iStar bag tutorial. So this tutorial is going to be up on YouTube by itself without a link required. So in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how I make my linings with zippers for crochet bags. In this video in particular, I'm making a lining for my angel star bag, my angel eye bag. And if you're interested in that pattern, go ahead and check out the link below. I will link our website where you can buy the pattern and also where you can buy any of our crocheted items pre-made or ask for a custom order. So this video is going to be up before the pattern is released. So right now it's the end of October and the pattern won't be released until January 2026. So if you're wondering why the pattern's not up, if you're looking for it, that is why. But just keep an eye out for it come January 2026. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so this is our angel eye bag that we have done, blocked, and everything. This is the front, this is the back, and this is what our lining will end up looking like. This is for actually one of my green ones, so that's why it's green. But it'll have a zipper closure and front sides facing together on the inside, so you see the pattern when you open it. So for materials, you will need your finished bag, the lining that you want to put in, a fabric marker to mark, scissors to cut, and I'm using zipper tape, but you could get your own zippers at Michael's. Just make sure that you measure the correct length for the opening because it is a pretty big bag. And then with my zipper tape comes the actual zipper pull tabs. And then this one's optional. I like it because it makes it easier. I use a skip blade along my zipper tape to go ahead and put the yarn through it. However, you could use a sharper darning needle and just poke holes through it yourself. Or I've actually seen some people use a fork and they'll heat it up and then poke holes through it on a surface that won't burn. So if you're using that method, please be careful. But there's a few different methods that you can use to get the yarn into the zipper tape to then attach it to your bag. So this is what the finished product will look like. Once again, we have sewn our zipper onto our bag, and then I used my skip blade here to cut the holes, and then I put my yarn through. The last thing that you'll need, two things that you'll need, is a 3.5 millimeter hook or smaller and a darning needle. So I personally still use a darning needle, and I will use a 3.5 millimeter hook or smaller to go through the holes in my skip blade because the holes are pretty small. So those are the materials that you will need. Let's go ahead and get started. One last thing that you'll need is the actual yarn color for the bag. So today I'm making my pink bag, so I have my secondary bag color here, just one strand of it. Forgot to mention that, but I'm going to go ahead and put this in. So you also need your yarn color of choice. So the first thing that you want to do is face your fabric wrong sides together so that when you're drawing, you draw on the wrong side rather than the correct side, even though this is a disappearing ink washable fabric marker. I still prefer to do that on the wrong side that people won't see, just so I don't have to go through the effort of actually cleaning it off. All right, so I'm actually going to fold it maybe the other way. Yes. Okay. And then I always like to place this edge here, which is where the fabric is folded together, closest to me. And that's where I will place the bottom of my bag. So next you're going to go ahead and grab your bag with the opening towards the top and the bottom point lined up with the bottom of your fabric. And then for star bags, I don't actually make the star shape up here. I make a straight line across so that I can put it in straight along here, because I don't want my zipper to kind of bend in a V shape, because that will make it harder to open and close. You want it straight across. So while I'm drawing here, I'm going to go ahead and mark kind of the middle points of my star, so I know that I need to switch directions there. And then I'm going to pick a point about 1 inch down from where my bag stops up here and mark that, so I know that that's where I need to make a straight line across. And then I'm going to go ahead and trace around my bag. And for this bag in particular, you don't really need to leave a seam allowance because the fur sticks out so much. You can just trace where the fur is, and that is your seam allowance. But for other bags, if you're doing this for a different one, you want to leave a couple centimeters of seam allowance to make sure that you have enough of your lining for your bag. So next, I'm going to go ahead and grab a straight edge and mark where my lining will stop up here. So let me grab that really quick. I'm at my sister's house, so I have limited things, so that's why I'm using a cutting board, but we're going to go ahead and use our straight edge here. I'm going to go a little bit below it, and that is where we will line up our zipper to our bag. So now, using our fabric scissors, we're going to go ahead and cut this out, but I'm not going to cut along this seam here because it's just kind of closed for me already. So I will sew over it, but it'll keep my two pieces together in place if I don't cut it. So I'm going to cut a little bit off of the line, just a little bit, because we've already kind of allowed our seam allowance. And these aren't the best scissors, so sorry for any noises. And I'm not the best cutter because I'm trying not to get in the way. I usually use a rotary blade on a cutting mat as well. So, oh my goodness. All right, there goes that. That's okay. And then I'm going to do the other side and then turn it so that I make sure to cut this straight. So I'm going to go ahead again, leaving some closed together. Cut along. Sorry for getting in the way of the camera here. And then I'm going to face it towards me a little bit better and cut along our straight edge. All right, and then we'll get this excess fabric out of the way. So I believe that this fabric in particular was a remnant. So I don't know exactly how much it was. I believe it was about a yard, and I used a good chunk of it. So you would need about half a yard to a yard of fabric, but your dimensions will be close to 19 by 17 and a half. So make sure that you have enough fabric. Again, if you want to make your bag before buying the fabric, go ahead and measure your bag so you know how much fabric you'll need. Next, we're going to measure our zipper. So we're going to put our zipper up here, and you want about 2 to 3 inches on either side. And we'll go ahead and cut that. And then to add our tab to our zipper, you're going to open it, maybe open it, cut off a little bit on one side, not going through both, just one side, like this. And then grab your zipper pull. Place it on the one side. And then the other. So I'm going to push it back up a little bit. Try to line it up. And then you're just going to push down. And then once it's down a little bit, you can hold on to this part and pull it. And then I'm going to get my sewing machine back up here. Grab this in case I need to pause the video. Grab my sewing machine. Get the scissors out of the way. And we will come back to our fabric. We attach our zipper to our fabric first, but to make sure that you don't pull this all the way off, you're going to sew along your zipper right here. So using just a straight stitch, you're going to very carefully sew along your zipper. I go really slow because if you hit the metal, your needle can break. So you go slow back and forth. I like to go 5 or 6 times, at least. Sometimes I'll do more, sometimes I'll do less. And then you're going to dance around to make sure it's secure. And then cut. And use your scissors to cut off any extra thread. So these are the only scissors I have today, so pardon their hugeness. All right. And then I don't have a lighter with me, but sometimes I'll either add the anti-fray kind of like thread glue to the edge here, or I'll just use a lighter to melt it so it doesn't fray as bad. But again, I don't have either of those with me, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it as it is and just make sure that I sewed pretty far back. So now you're going to do the same onto the other side. I'm going to clip this now that it's on to make it even. And sew across our other side. And see there, it stopped because it hit the metal. So if I were pressing it really hard, my needle would have continued and it would have broke. And I did it again. So I'm just using my hand crank to crank it up, trying different spots to see if it aligns better. There we go. All right, and then I'm going to dance around over here. Make sure it's secure. Let our needle ends up. And go ahead and cut any extra threads off. All right. Excuse me. So now we're going to line our zipper up with the edge of our bag. So to ensure that the zipper is facing the right way, what you want to do is line it up from this top edge here with the inside of one of your fabrics. So we're going to line it up just like that. I'm going to go ahead and pin it down, and then I'll be back with you to show you how I sew it without a zipper foot, because I don't currently have a zipper foot with this machine. All right, so now that I have it pinned, I'm going to bring my sewing machine a little bit closer and then take this top pin out. And I'm going to line my foot up with the edge of my zipper. And then I'm going to push my zipper up, my needle foot as close to the zipper as I can. So this machine only you can do 2 spots over. Other machines you can go like 4 or 5 over. So I'm going to go ahead and sew backwards. Until we get to our edge of the fabric here, and then sew forwards. So if you had a zipper foot, you would just use that instead, have it be on here, leave this as normal, but I don't have a zipper foot with me, so I'm not going to use one. So we're just going to go ahead with a straight stitch and stitch along our edge here, making sure to stay as close as possible, but it's okay if it comes up a little bit. And then when I get here, I like to go ahead and open my zipper so that it's not fighting with it. And then we're going to go back and forth along the edge to make sure that it is secure. And then cut off our ends. And that is it started. So now to get it onto the other side, we're going to flip everything over. And just like before, we're going to align the top of our zipper with the side of our bag. So make sure that your panels of your fabric are aligned while you're doing this. And then you'll go ahead and pin this into place. I'm just going to loosely pin it. And sew this one on the same exact way that we did the other one. So first going backwards until we get to our edge here, and then we'll go back forwards. Making sure to keep our foot as close to the zipper metal as possible. So since I took that last one out, I'm going to reline it up. And just go over that edge a few times and cut it off. And then we're going to snip off all of our excess thread. Excuse me. Didn't mean to do that. Try not to cut your zipper tape like I did. I did a little cut right there, but that's okay because we're going to crochet over it. Now we are going to sew the sides of our bag together. So I personally sew over it 3 times, first with a straight stitch, then with a zigzag along the edge, and then I do the zigzag along the edge again. So with a straight stitch, I'm going to follow along our line, cut off any excess, which I probably won't have any if much of, and then almost overlock it with this machine. So sewing over the seams, over the edge. So I personally am not going to pin my fabric because I don't have that many pins, and I am decently confident with being able to keep it together. Usually I have the clips and I will clip it. That's just easier on me because I poke myself with these so many times. So to begin, we're going to go forward, backwards, backwards all the way as far as it'll let you to the zipper, and then go ahead and start. So to make these curves, which if you have a sewing machine, you probably know, you just curve your hand as it is sewing. So I'm going to curve and pull it to the side. And then now we're at an edge here. So this bag is star shaped, however, it is pretty rounded. If you make a true star bag or anything that has points, you would lower your needle into it, lift up your foot, and change directions to where you want it to go. So for this one, it's just down a little bit more, and then you continue sewing. And then just like before, we're going to get as close to the zipper as it'll allow us without going over the zipper. All right, so we're going to go ahead, snip this off. And this is our straight stitch. I'm sure it's very hard to see if you can see it at all. But now I'm going to cut off some of the excess and then switch to our zigzag stitch and zigzag over the edges. So again, we're just going to snip just a little bit, if any, going along very carefully not to cut your stitches that you just made. So the reason that I do this is because I've had a few bags fail on me and a very, very nice customer who was able to get it back to me so I could fix it for them, where I would just sew it like this, and then they would put something really heavy into it and a stitch would pop, and then it would just come all the way open. So now I overlock it, or my version of overlocking the edges so that that doesn't happen. And especially since this bag is huge and also it's meant to hold a lot of stuff, you want to really make sure that you allow it to do that by sewing the inside fabric as strong together as you can. So now with my zigzag, I'm going to start pretty much the same way we did before, going backwards, forward, backwards, and then just all along our edges as we did before. So I refitted everything and finished up our bag. So now we're going to move on to using our skip blade or whatever method you're using. As you can see, it's really strong. To go ahead and cut along our zipper. So you want to cut below where you stitched, but not too close to the zipper that when you put the yarn through, it will get caught. So directly below where you stitched on. So I'm going to grab my cutting board, my skip blade, and go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go directly below where my stitching is. And I like to use this method of pushing down really hard and going back and forth before moving forward. Otherwise, you might not get through every layer of fabric because it is 2 layers, the zipper layer and the fabric layer, and it just makes it a little bit easier to get through. So now that we've done that on that side, we're going to do it along this side. So again, directly below the zipper, directly below the zipper stitching, but not right on top of the metal part of the zipper. Otherwise, when you're zipping, you'll catch your yarn. All right, so here we have our holes. You can kind of see them. Let's see. Hopefully that's in frame. I don't know if it is. Sorry if it's not. But our holes are right there. All right. So now we're going to grab a 3.5 millimeter hook and go ahead and crochet into this. If you don't want to do that, you could just backstitch along the holes as well. So you would insert your needle to start, pull through, go in the next one, and then you would pull through, skipping this section, and then go back through around it. So there's other videos on how to backstitch out there that you could look up into. I'm going to show you my method, which is using the crochet hook. All right, so I only had a 3 hook with me. So with our 3 hook, we're going to insert along one of the holes, but not the very last one. So just insert into a hole. And with your yarn, you're going to make a slip knot, pull through, and do a single crochet. So we're going to do a single crochet, chain 1, and then going into our next hole, a single crochet, and a chain 1. We're going to do this all the way across until we get to this corner, and I'll get back to you when we get to this corner because it's a little bit different to turn. So I'll show you a couple more times. You just go through your hole that you've made, single, chain 1. Going through the hole, single, chain 1. And to find it, I just kind of run my hook along it and you'll kind of catch it so you'll know where to push. So single, chain 1. We're going to do that all the way across until we get to our corner over here. So while I'm doing this, I just want to talk about some other methods that you can use if you don't have a sewing machine, because I know that they're not accessible for everyone. So first, I would suggest searching your local library for their amenities because they might have sewing machines available. And then if not, if you don't have access to one in general, invest in a skip blade. And what you would do is skip along both sides of fabric and then crochet into it as I'm doing. And you would do the same to crochet the zipper along. So basically, instead of having it in place by our stitching, we would pin it in place the same way we did, skip blade along it, and then crochet the same exact way that we're doing to attach our fabric to our zipper. So those are some other methods that you can use that I'm just not going to show in this video because I do have my sewing machine with me, and that is what I use. But those are some other options. And again, this is a YouTube tutorial, so you can go ahead and search up other ways if none of those are accessible to you. If the fork method or the skip blade method isn't accessible to you, you could also hand stitch it. Again, though, just make sure you go over it a couple of times and use either a ladder stitch, I believe it's called, or something to make sure that you're going over this edge to make sure it is strong. You want it to be very strong. So I do suggest using yarn or embroidery thread if you're hand stitching it. But again, do what you have access to. All right, so we just finished our last single crochet, and now instead of chaining 1, because we're at our corner here, we're going to chain up 10. Excuse me. Okay, and then we're going to go across, flip our work, and go into the other side and single crochet into here. So now when we go to sew in our lining, we will use this in our corners. So we'll sew this chain 10 space along this corner here under our D-ring. So now you're just going to go ahead and continue along doing our single crochet, chain 1, single crochet, chain 1, all the way along until you get to your next corner, where you're also going to chain 10, single crochet into the other side, and get back over to where we started. Once I get here, I will show you how I tie off and hide this. So now that we've finished our last stitch, we're going to slip stitch into our first stitch, chain 1, cut a thread, cut our thread leaving a long tail, and then we're going to pull that down with our other one tail that we left earlier. That was just with our slip knot. Tie it, and then either with a darning needle or your crochet hook that you've been using, you're going to go up under and inside the kind of tubed fabric and pull it through that. So you can see here how my hook is under the fabric. Hopefully I'm in frame. I don't really know. Pull it through there. All right. And then cut off the tail. So I didn't get them both all the way through, so I'm going to do that again. Going under our tube of fabric, grabbing the tail, and pulling all the way through, and snipping it. Okay, so now you have the insert for your bag completed. In the next clips, I will show you how to actually sew along into our bag. So now that we have finished sewing together our 2 panels and adding our zipper and crocheting along, we are now going to insert this into our bag. And I suggest using either fabric clips or actual stitch markers to hold the corners and middle into place. I, again, don't have any with me right now, so I'm just going to wing it. But you want to align the chain 10 space with your corner over here, the other chain 10 space with the corner over here. I'm going to hook mine on my D-ring, but you'd be sewing it under the D-ring. And then we are going to start kind of in the middle here, using our darning needle and our yarn. We are going to go around our bag one time and then double how much yarn that is. And I always like to do a little bit extra as well. So like 1.5 times. Okay. And then threading our needle. Maybe. There we go. We are going to go along and sew from our either chain 1 space or single crochet into a stitch in our bag. So I'm going to go into our second to last row, the top of it, so around 11, and I'm going to sew into there. And then just going along either every stitch or every other stitch, sewing through. And we're going to do this all the way around until we get to our corner, where we're going to go into the chain spaces instead of our stitches here. So again, just going into either a chain 1 space or a single crochet. We're going to then go into the top of round 11 and pull through. All right. And as you're going along, make sure that you kind of pull a little tight so that you know that it's secure. So we're going to do that all the way around until we get to this corner. Now that we've gotten closer to our corner, we are going to line up the center of our chain 10 with right below our D-ring. Stretch that out a little bit. And then we're going to sew into our chain 1 space. And then again, catching any stitch you can at this point. And then we're going to go into one of our chains for chain 10 and go below the D-ring. So just make sure that you're catching a stitch. With the fur, it's a little bit tricky to see. You can even go into where you sewed your D-ring at. That's kind of what I did with that one. I'm going to do it again if I can. And then continue that along until you get to the other side. Again, just doing every stitch or every other stitch. And then, now that we are at our eye applique for version 3, we're going to go along making sure that we stay straight with this row right here. So I would line it up. Again, if you have pins, pin it. So I would be going a little into my iris color, but mainly into the white of the eye. So right here, making sure to catch a stitch, not go around it, because you don't want this color to pop through on the other side. Again, catching a stitch, going through it rather than around it, and just continue that along. Relining, and we're just going to continue along until we get to our other side. All right, so now that we've done our last stitch, we're going to go ahead and tie these two together. And just like before with our extra tails that we had from crocheting along the zipper, we're going to grab our hook and go in and under those all the way up. I went a little bit too far back. In and under till we get to our opening here. And then we're going to pull these through. Maybe. Okay. Making them? No. Okay. So instead, I'm just going to use my darning needle, thread this, cut off some excess, and go on in. Again, just going kind of under the zipper. And then cut your tails, and there's that. So now you have a fully lined with the zipper crochet bag. That works. Let me find the zip part. And then for these, you can either sew them in by hand stitching them, or I will personally glue them in. But with this being fur, I'm probably not going to use glue. I will hand stitch it to right here. Just so that when you're zipping and unzipping, they don't pull out. So it would be snug there, and you can zip as freely as you like. So now you have your lined bag with a zipper, and you are ready to move on to our next step, which is going to be making straps for these. So again, this is optional. You can either buy your straps, or if you have removable straps already with another bag, you can take those off and use those as well, as long as they have a clip on them. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how I make my nylon straps. So here we have our roll of nylon webbing. I usually for my purses only use 1 inch webbing, but for these, since they are like heavier duty, I got 1.5 inches. So what we're going to do is, this is just one roll that I got. I will type in the measurements when I edit the video right here. So I'm going to just cut this in half to make 2 straps. And again, I would use the anti-fray solution or a lighter on these, but I don't have one with me currently. So I'm just going to fold it over and sew it multiple times. So now we have our 2 straps we're going to add our hardware to them. So the first thing that you need is a slide buckle. I had to get these special again because this is the first time I'm doing 1.5 inch straps. But these are called slide buckles, and you just need one for each strap. And then you also need, if I can find them, what are called lobster clasps, but that's a very broad term. So make sure that you type in 1 inch to 1.5 inch swivel lobster clasps or swivel clasps, and you should get something that looks like this. So these swivel around, and this is 1.5 inches. And right here is our lobster clasp. So for each strap, you need 2 of those. So you need 1 sliding buckle, 2 clasps, and your strap. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my sewing machine. And usually you want to color match your thread for this as well as your bobbin color. However, again, I'm pretty limited right now, and it'll be better to see for the video that I have just white on. So what you're going to do is slip one of your clasps on, and then with this center part facing up towards you, so this is the back of it, and this is the front of it. Hopefully I'm in frame, I really cannot tell. You want the front of it facing you, and you're going to go from left to right. So up through the left and down, down through the right. And pull that through, and now that's on. And then leaving about 1 inch here, we're going to sew this down to secure our our sliding buckle. So again, because I didn't use any anti-fray or anything on this, I'm going to fold it over once, fold it over twice, and then get it prettier, fold this down. I'm probably going to have to pin that in place. All right. Let me get a pin. So you just have to fold it down once if you use the lighter method or the anti-fray method. But again, I don't have those, so I have to fold it twice. So now you could either sew a box X shape or just along the top and bottom. I personally like the box shape, especially for straps like this that are going to have very heavy things on them. So to do that, you just go across a couple of times. All right, so I fixed my bobbin thread, and then I undid this and just did it 1 time because it was not working with the 2 for me right now, but that should be okay. So we're going to go ahead and sew a line across. Again, a couple of times, trying to be as straight as possible with it, especially for me since you'll be able to see the thread color. And then you're going to lower your needle, and you don't have to necessarily do it in this sequence, but this is how I'm going to do it right now. Lower our needle, lift up our presser foot, and I'm going to go down across diagonal towards me to make our X shape, and then back up. Then again, lowering our foot, I'm going to come up and sew along this edge, making sure our buckle does not get clipped, so that will break our needle. And then going from this corner along our other diagonal. So I'm going to go backwards first. And then forwards, trying to hold our buckle out of the way. And then backwards again. Forwards again. Backwards one more time. And now we're going to lower our needle and go along, go along the bottom. And then do not forget your last side here. All right. And then here's that. As you can see, it is a boxed X shape. And this cannot come off at any angle. And here's what the back looks like. Also a box X. So now what we're going to do is make sure that it is not curled. Take our other side. Now from right to left, going up from the right and down from the left. Get it in there. There we go. Pull it through. So now we've created our slide over here, and you do not sew down this swivel hook because this is the one that can slide and move to where it needs to go. But we are going to sew down the swivel hook that goes on this end. So we're going to put our hook on and again, fold it over. And sew it. If you want to do the box shape for this one, I recommend going down a little further. But just keep in mind that it will take some inches away from the final strap length. So I don't know if you can hear it, but there is some talking in the background. It's just my mom talking to one of our cats. So if you hear that, we're just having fun with our cats. So now you're going to clip off the excess thread. So this one is really, really messy. This is where I would love to have little scissors. As you can see, I kind of, as you watched, messed up and came off of it. So I had to reattach it, and then there was loose thread that got sewn over. I don't know if you can quite see it, but I'm going to go in and snip all that up. And this is our better looking side. So this is our X's. And now, after I clip it all up, we have one strap that extends to close to, I want to say 60 inches. That sounds about right. But this, again, is a new brand that I'm using, so I'd have to measure it for certain. So I'm going to clip all these up. and meet back with you. All right, so now we're going to do the same exact thing with our other strap, and then we will have 2 straps for our backpack. So that's all for how we make our zipper lining as well as our straps. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, and I will try to answer them. Again, this is actually part 3 of a series where I go over how to make my angel eye bag, put it together, and then this is the 3rd part of us lining it and making the straps for it. If you're interested in the pattern, make sure to check us out. Our website is linked below for the pattern coming around January 2026, as well as our other crochet makes that we have available. And pretty soon, the bag that I showed in this video will be available up for sale as well. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.